team. I played it. We were doing really good. It was a playoff game, and my first shift of the game was like big playoff game. I blew out my shoulder. I went to go hit a kid, blew out my shoulder. So my following year, I missed a lot of like the times we hit tryouts in the summer to play for the teams in the next winter for like good junior teams. And that's kind of when I picked up MMA because like I wasn't, you know what I mean? I kind of got more into MMA then. I was like, it just kind of gave me an outlet that wasn't, I always pulling my energy into hockey. Now this gave me a separate outlet, and it was MMA, and I got competitive into that, did that for 2 years, and then until I eventually joined the military. So I think MMA fighters, they really could come from any branch, you know what I mean? But like for me, I played a lot of other sports growing up, and I think that helped me train like a professional athlete to be a professional MMA fighter.
So I got to ask, what's it like to get punched in the face?
Obviously I try not to get punched in the face as much as possible. I do not like to get punched in the face. I feel like, which is probably not a good thing, but over time you kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? I don't even blink my eyes when I get punched in the face. I remember when I used to get punched, get rocked, you get like this adrenaline feeling, like, oh my God, what happened? I don't really get that too much. It's either I'm getting knocked out or I'm just okay. So it's not the best feeling, but I try to avoid it. I try to be smarter because concussions, you're hearing all these things about concussions this day and age, and I try to only do my hard sparring only when I need to for my fights. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to just, let's go spar. It's fun. I love it. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I try to be smart about what I do.
Well, when it comes to the preparing for a fight, now what's your record as a pro since you've gone pro?
I am 5-1.
5-1, and
Yep.
that's wildly impressive. And so if you were an NFL team with that winning record, you'd be amazing, right?
Coming up in a little over an hour, Bobby Carpenter will join us, plus Clay Travis in an hour and a half. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. It is time. It's time for Primary Complaint.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Primary Complaint on OutKick 360.
Guys, my primary complaint this week, I've found the new worst, the new low. The worst bathrooms in America are not at your down the street gas station. No, in fact, They're at your local movie theater. Disgusting, despicable. And I don't plan on going back to see a movie there until they actually improve those conditions, because I don't want to have to leave feeling like I need a tetanus shot and a shower. That's my primary complaint.
That's just called a Tuesday night for me. That's really good. I never gone to the bathrooms in the movie theater to know that. So my primary complaint, not the staff dinner that we had in Phoenix when we were there for the Super Bowl. It was a lovely chat and a lovely time with everyone there with OutKick. Not really even the restaurant per se that we were at that took way too long to get anything. Water, drinks, appetizers, food, all those things. My primary complaint is that if you are going to say you are short-staffed when we walk in and continue to apologize for everything, it's not enough just to say you're short-staffed, even if the restaurant isn't full, which this one wasn't. You must take it to the next level. You do not have the right to be territorial if you don't have people there to help you in a prompt amount of time. Here's what I'm proposing, okay? Actually, I have a solution to my primary complaint this time. Make your restaurant self-service. If I walk in and you tell me it's going to be an hour and a half before you get your food, I may be exaggerating, maybe not. It felt about that long the other night. Well, then if I can see our food order is right there at the edge of the kitchen, I should be allowed to go grab that food and bring it back to our party. If our drink orders are at the bar, I should be able to go and get that from the bar, or just skip right past you and have a tab at the bar and not have you look at me cross if I go to the bar and back to the table. You do not have the right to be territorial if you don't have enough people to give prompt service. So tell us, change your restaurant, make it self-service. Do something other than making people wait way too long for food and drink. That is my primary complaint.
Well, guys, for me, my primary complaint revolves around the Hallmark card industry. I don't know when the last time you guys bought a card was, but I went yesterday. It's $9 for just like a generic Hallmark card. And
Happy Valentine's Day?
Yeah, pretty much. And now I will say they could just wait to the last day and then mark it up. I'm never going to know because I'm always the last one to do this. But the fact that these cards are now going for the rate they are, like, is this some sort of racket? How have they got this? Like, they're just funneling money in and on the outside they're like, all right, we can at least mark it up to $9. I don't understand how cards have gotten this expensive. My sister, she actually has a good idea. Now, granted, it's like plagiarizing or whatever, but she'll just take a picture of the card and then just go home and recreate it. But I don't have the time to do that, and I'm not going to waste the money doing that. Well, I wouldn't be wasting money. Time is money. So you get where I'm at on that one, but that is my primary complaint.
See, now the question I have is, who was Davy's Valentine?
This was for my grandmother, man.
For your grandmother.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's good.
She's
Put that
worth
out
$9
there for the ladies. Yeah. What if Hallmark was like, with all these exorbitant charges for cards, they were secretly funding the war in Ukraine or something? It comes out later. I could see that story. Like, we went from $3 a card to $9
Hallmark
because,
and Ticketmaster.
Yeah, they're funneling arms somewhere to help out in some conflict somewhere globally. Maybe that's the case with Hallmark. It's been many years since I've purchased. I shouldn't say that. I sometimes am tasked with going to get Christmas cards.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, we're going to this thing. Like, can you swing by somewhere and grab a card? Occasionally, I'll be the one requested to do that, and I'll pay for it. I'll be honest, I'm terrible about looking at prices of things. Not because I'm that rich.
Same.
I'm just not that diligent at looking at prices. I just grab something that's small and assume it's not a lot of money. But apparently, according to Davey, I'm wrong. It is a lot of money. So I should start looking at it.
Compared to where it was.
I've seen cars like $15 with the bells and whistles on them.
That's got to have the sound box on the inside.
Yeah.
You're going to open it up and it's going to play some Madonna for you.
And then the battery dies
Those
quickly.
are the ones that are expensive.
Yeah. Headlines when we return, including Lamar Jackson returning to the Ravens. Maybe not. Discussion next.
Joe has been in office nearly 2 years, and yes, it feels like much longer. But for these last 2 years, plus the 2 prior he campaigned from the basement, the mainstream media, along with fellow Democrats, have covered for Joe. All they needed to do was get him over the finish line and into the White House. They successfully installed that man like the increasingly dim light bulb he is, and it worked. The successfully weaponized impeachments, the plandemic, and mass mail-in voting to get their guy elected. And he's been useful for the radical left. He's pushed through major climate change legislation and other Green New Deal policies disguised as infrastructure and inflation reduction, and he's done it all while barely being awake. It's an accomplishment, but not for the right reasons. But it's no secret Joe is sleeping. That whole weekend at Bernie charade can only work so long. The expiration date on it and Joe himself is coming, and in fact, it may have already come. Enter news of these batches of classified documents found in various Biden nooks and crannies. Even the mainstream media is covering it, and even leftist pundits and his fellow Democrats seemed alarmed at the findings. Or is it feigned shock and alarm? Follow me as we connect the dots in this very political game of Clue. They've known about at least one batch of these documents since early November of last year. They had to keep it quiet so they could keep the heat on Trump's documents and his alleged criminal activity. But now the cat is out of the bag, and it's my sincere belief that not only are Democrats okay with their man going down, but I go as far as to say it was Democrats who leaked the news. Why? Because they don't want to be pigeonholed into a futile life support campaign leading up to 2024. They don't want Biden. These findings of classified documents at Casa, Closet, and Garage a la Biden makes it a lot easier and a lot cleaner for them to move away from Joe. Yes, if you listen closely, hear that? You can hear a man in the Sacramento, California governor's mansion readying his hair gel. You can hear a very disappointing diversity pick greasing up her broom. A man named Chasten picking out decor for the White House holiday display. And if you listen really, really closely, you can even hear a nasty woman somewhere in Chappaqua, New York, steaming a pantsuit. They are sitting on ready. Wait for it. But before we go today, I'd like to wish a very, very happy birthday to
Well, look, my wife has a rule in her family. When somebody's birthday, you sing happy birthday. You ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Valen. Happy birthday to you. Well.
Just like that, the second hour is here. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Hutton and Withrow with you. Coming up, we'll get into the Pac-12 and the media contract trouble that they could be in, needing to strike a TV deal moving forward past 2024. That's yet to happen. Details on that, plus NBA All-Star Weekend, Tennessee, Alabama tonight with a weird line out of Vegas. Chad's got details for us
prediction,
there.
I bet that line, I thought this when I tweeted about it last night, that it will flip. We'll see when we talk about it if it's already flipped, but I'm going to be shocked if it stays where it was.
So the story from Jordan Schultz at the Score, during the offensive coordinator search for Baltimore and the Ravens, they were not assuring the offensive coordinators that Lamar Jackson was going to be their quarterback next season. I buy this. I also buy the fact that they want him back. But what they don't know, Chad, is Lamar Jackson's side of things and how he's going to handle moving forward with the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, this is just it's odd in that the question now is being posed, if you're franchised. I was actually watching ESPN this morning, and Herm Edwards was asked a question. It's a good example. Former, head coach in the NFL for years. And he said, if you're Lamar Jackson, or if you're offering up advice to Lamar Jackson, if you are franchised, do you play? And he took a beat and he said, no, because this was the year that I was playing for the contract. And I went out and did it with no assurances and got hurt. So I'm not playing. But I'm also thinking, how is that the best option? Just to sit out? Right. I mean, I don't know. You're going to make an awful lot of money on the franchise tag. I think that's going a long way to say that, if you don't believe in me at all by this point, then I'm out. But the reason you don't believe in him is because of the injuries late in the season. That's really it. I don't know any other reasons not to believe in the guy's play based on what he's done for your franchise, right? It's all about the injury, but then on the flip side, you could argue, well, the injury this last time came in a season where he was playing on a prove-it year and decided to go out there and do it, even though you wouldn't lock him up long-term before the season. It's a tricky situation. Now, my advice would be play and make, the average of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league for a year and then see where it goes.
Well, they could tag him again, but then it goes up by 10% on the tag versus where it was. So he'll get 120%, excuse me. So he makes bank doing that. He doesn't get the fully guaranteed contract that he wants, which is what we saw from the Browns, right? He wants that type of money. The other thing from Baltimore's end of it, and I know the quotes, Harbaugh saying at the end of season press conference, there's no question about it, Lamar is our quarterback. He's setting the tone of negotiations by saying 200% we want him back. He's confident that Lamar Jackson's going to play in Baltimore next year. Also keep this in mind, too. Lamar Jackson had a hand in who they hired for offensive coordinator. That's also been reported. And if that's true, then they're making sure that he's happy with the direction of the offense based around what he wants, as well as the contract is concerned, too. The other part of this, though, Chad, what if the Ravens get an offer that they just simply can't refuse for him? What if they get a type of haul that we saw the Browns give the Texans? I think a perfect landing spot would be Atlanta for Lamar Jackson.
I just don't. I don't know how you do that if you're Baltimore. I mean, I signed the guy. Like, it's just.
Well, you sign him, but I think in order to. He turned down a lot of guaranteed money last year.
I know.
And if you're not willing to pony up that way and you're tired of the headache, do you just say, okay, let's trade him, let's get what we can?
It's just such a rare find.
I know.
To get Lamar Jackson, where they got him, he wasn't a top 10 pick, but where they got him, and for him to transform that offense, really in his own image. That offense is in Lamar Jackson's image.
Yes.
And that's how it's built. But to be able to do that and to capture it and to win as many games as they've won with Lamar Jackson, he hasn't been to the Super Bowl yet. I get all those things. He's in a very crowded market of great quarterbacks in the AFC. But think about all the other teams in football that are searching for that Lamar Jackson type. You've got him. You've got him right now. I understand that it may be a headache. It may be too rich for your blood and what you want to pay in guaranteed money, all those things. But I find a way to make it work. I'm not seriously considering trading him at any point, just because we know how hard it is to find the next Lamar Jackson that could be there. He's still so young, that could be there for a generation as your quarterback.
Ozzie Newsome in his final draft set up all of this to put things in order, and now Eric DeCosta is running things, and he says, and who is already in the organization during this, they're going in that direction moving forward. They want Lamar Jackson. And for those who are like, oh, what's he done? Look at the Ravens recently. He is 45-16 as their starter when he starts games in the 61 starts. That's all you need to know. He's electric. And if made available, you want to speak on who's willing to pony up and pay the guy, there will be someone that's willing to give him the type of money that we saw in Cleveland. He's really the only guy that qualifies for this based on his situation of Baltimore not wanting to pay him. We don't know that yet about the Chargers or the Bengals in regards to them or what's going to happen this offseason in Philadelphia with Hurts, but it's Jackson that's dug in, not the other guys.
There are reports that Cincinnati actually is in a position to give Joe Burrow what he wants. I remember reading that they'll be fine in offering that and doing it. I will still, as great as Lamar Jackson has been, I don't think Lamar Jackson, I don't think it translates to the same extent as it does in Baltimore, given their current roster and situation everywhere. Well, I don't think it's necessarily just a plug and dominate guy.
I think in Atlanta,
it's a huge upgrade a lot of places.
But
I'm not
in
arguing
Arthur
that.
Smith's offense, though.
Yeah,
it
probably.
Fits.
And it may be the one spot, but I don't think you can say that everywhere.
No, it's like
Aaron Rodgers is an example. I think Aaron Rodgers is wherever he ends up, wherever they trade him, I think he's going to be an upgrade for almost everyone in the league, wherever he goes.
It's a different mentality.
I think Lamar
on the
Jackson is a different level of upgrade based on surrounding personnel and based on his ability to run and what you need with that ability around him. I think that's what changes it.
Do you think Todd Monken leaves for that job? Not leaves Georgia, but leaves Georgia for Baltimore if there was not some assurance with Lamar Jackson being his quarterback?
I don't think he interviewed for any other NFL offensive coordinator jobs. Tampa. I'd still rather be in Baltimore. So my answer to the question is yes.
Yeah.
If given those two options, he was going to leave for the NFL. Okay, I believe that. I believe there's a reason that Mike Bobo got the job 3 seconds after the guy left. And I believe there's a reason that Todd Monken is telling the media in the build-up to a national championship game, well, let's not talk about family. This isn't a family. Kirby could fire me at any time, and I could leave at any time. Dude knew he was about to move on. He wanted to be in the NFL. So he was going to go. So even if Lamar Jackson isn't there, I think Monken would be wise to rather be with that organization, with Baltimore, as opposed to the possible wreckage you're going to have in Tampa if it's Kyle Trask.
Right.
I mean, based on whatever they try to upgrade with.
Right.
And they're not picking high, so you're not going to get a franchise guy in the draft that you're going to mold.
I mean, I'd rather have Huntley over Trask, but I see your point. If it's not Lamar Jackson.
But you take that chance, because I still think there's a very slim possibility that he's
I think
not
this
there.
is what Lamar has been okay with. I think he's been okay with the idea that, okay, you're not going to give me the fully guaranteed money. I'll get fully guaranteed money every year as you tag me. And then after 2 years, he'll make roughly around $70+ million guaranteed, based on the way the cap is going up and the tags and the contracts that are continuing to flow in for the quarterbacks. I mean, he's looking at it like he's making Kirk Cousins type money when he first went to Minnesota on that 3-year deal. He's making that within 2 years, and I mean, it's generational type wealth that he's wanting. But in terms of the fully guaranteed money, once he signs the franchise tag, he's got it. So I think he'll sign it if he's tagged. I think the negotiations continue. And I don't think there are – I mean, I realize he didn't make the trip to Cincy, but the players, the reaction from his teammates in that game, after that game when they got back, and also the reaction from Harbaugh and DaCosta at the presser, that tells me that they're okay with whatever went down at the end of the year, and that he wasn't on the sideline, and that they're willing to continue those talks, which he cut off, by the way. He had a deadline starting the season because he's representing himself. He cut those talks off in order to focus on the season or whatever he wanted to do. Now those talks can pick up again, and we'll see where the Ravens come in as they continue to renegotiate what was the contract offer that he turned down a year ago.
You know what the rest of the league is rooting for in this situation? That anything happens other than him getting a huge guaranteed contract.
Sure.
Especially if you're one of the teams that you feel like you're going to be the next one up. They're hoping this is a franchise situation laid out, and then it works out where he doesn't get the big contract.
Not the second fully guaranteed.
I don't think they're rooting for injury per se or anything, that would prevent that. But they're hoping that it just doesn't, that Deshaun Watson ultimately is seen as this big-time outlier because of the desperation of the Haslams and the Browns, and not the first domino to fall with every major quarterback getting a fully guaranteed contract.
And I don't know.
That's what the owners want.
They don't want him to be the second.
Yeah, they don't want it now to be. They want the Deshaun Watson thing to not be the precedent, but to be the exception to the rule.
I would also be hesitant for Baltimore's sake. Baltimore, look at Dallas with Prescott. They would not. They continue to kick that contract down the road with a couple of tags, and then Prescott ended up getting hurt 5 games into that franchise tag year, and then they gave him the money anyway. They ended up paying him more than what they had to, and they paid more by not getting something done earlier because Jerry didn't want to pay up of what Prescott was wanting.
Yeah.
But if he had, he would have ended up saving money versus what he ended up spending on the tags plus the new guarantees.
Now, do you think the Ravens and Bisciotti, if Lamar Jackson was lost 5 games into this season on a franchise tag, do you think they would pay him what he ultimately wanted?
I mean, if they get the results whenever he's not in the lineup, probably. They lose when he's not starting.
I don't know. I think it'd be tough to replicate that, even if they lost every game from there on out. I think the knock would just be, well, you can't stay healthy anyway, so it's not going to matter.
Well, they've already offered him the guarantees similar to what Prescott got in Dallas, and he turned it down. So it'll be on him now. It's a huge risk. I mean, you're getting offered $150+ million guaranteed. I couldn't turn it down. But this guy is. And he's representing himself while doing it. More power to him. And by the way, if you are a fan of the league and a fan of the players getting theirs versus what the owners have, you should be rooting for this guy to cash in. Big. I find it, weird that the NFL media is siding on the side of the owners in this. Seems like a lot of people are like, too much of a risk. He doesn't need to represent himself. He's actually handled this very well, in my opinion, versus what he could have done, which is just taking the initial offer.
Yeah, I think the one thing that the counter to what you're saying is, and I don't see a lot of media saying this or making this point in their argument about it if they're taking the side of ownership. Part of the reason that a lot of people love the NFL is because nothing is guaranteed. They feel like they're getting optimum effort because they don't ever have to wonder about someone resting on their laurels because they can get cut at any point. And all they get is what they already got in the signing bonus.
Right.
And all that contract, all those numbers mean nothing if they get cut. And look, that's a great thing for the business of the NFL too, right? I mean, that's awesome for the owners that gets to continue. So I'm with you. I don't understand yay, let's go billionaires. I'm going to be on the side of the billionaires over the millionaires. But I do understand wanting to protect what you love so much if you're a fan. And if you believe that part of the reason the sport is so great is that people never rest because they could get cut at any moment and that competition drives them, then I think that's why you probably side with the owners. I haven't heard that argument laid out that way very much. So I don't know that people are saying that. That would be my side of it if I was arguing for it. I want everybody to get whatever they can, ultimately. But I can see why owners would be staunchly against, the guaranteed contract starting to come into the league like we saw with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah,
I totally understand that.
The money that's given out to the players in the NFL versus the other leagues, vastly different. Vastly different. And I don't want the player – I don't think it's great for the NBA that the players run the league. But – playing every snap because you want to get that, get the money and you don't want to be cut, that's going to happen. I mean, because what the owners are doing is they're cutting the non-guaranteed salary part where it's, it's just a fluff year at the back end of a contract to make it look bigger for the agent. They're cutting that player even if he's doing okay.
Yeah.
Because you can go get a cheaper, younger player in the draft. You're not necessarily upgrading yet. You could. But it's going to be a weaker position initially versus, offensive linemen, for instance, come to mind. Those take time to develop and gel with a new group if you're overhauling things.
Yeah, the one thing that would be my one criticism about the contract structure of the NFL is it does incentivize the owner to, even if a veteran wanted to make the minimum of what they're due, just to keep playing.
Right.
It doesn't incentivize ownership to do that. It incentivizes them to go draft someone in the 4th or 5th round and start over, and then that guy's done playing, even if he's playing well. That's not right. That's not necessarily the meritocracy we love about the sport. That's just simply, this guy's doing fine, but we're going to get someone that's a slight downgrade just because they're a lot cheaper.
Chad, Tiger Woods, he is back. He's returning to the Genesis Invitational at Riviera, and he's in it to win it. Here's Tiger.
The recovery is more on my ankle. The leg is better than it was last year. I'm excited to go out there and compete and play with these guys. And I would not have put myself out here if I didn't think I could beat these guys and win the event. That's my mentality. And if I wasn't ready to win at this level, I am very rusty, but I've come off rusty situations before and I've done well. And plus also I know this golf course. I know I haven't had a lot of success on this golf course, but I knew what to practice for.
And he's in it to win it. And I believe him from the mental edge that he requires to play. He's not signing up just to be, the mascot of the Genesis Invitational. I don't know if the body can hold up anymore. We'll find out. I want him to win. I want him to have success. You were there at the Masters for his win.
2019.
And, the fanfare around that, it's like Brady. I want one more year of Brady. I'm not going to get it. I want one more win for Tiger.
Yeah, it was amazing at the Masters being there for that when he won. And I think if you're just a fan of big spectacle, you want Tiger Woods to win again. So I'm all for him winning. I want to see it happen. He's 47 now. He's 2 years removed from the car accident that almost, took his life, or, at best maybe in the scenario, he may not have been in a wheelchair.
His leg.
Based on that, his leg. Yeah, it's pretty crazy where he is now. But he's talking about he can barely walk at times. Plantar fasciitis has set in on the surgically repaired leg.
And I detailed that. We saw that at St. Andrews and other places last year.
I love the mentality. It's really for everyone on the outside to have expectation about what they want to see or what a win would be or look like for Tiger Woods now. I wholeheartedly believe him when he says, I don't understand guys who have a different goal other than winning when they show up at a tournament. I've never been that. I don't understand why you show up to, make the cut or make an appearance. Everything I've ever done professionally has been to win. Yeah. When I show up, I'm expecting to win. I'm preparing to win. I believe him when he says that. I also believe that he will never win again. And I hate that. But that's what I believe.
Yeah, he finished, 45th or something at the Masters last year, and then he had to withdraw from the PGA Championship and missed the cut, his last appearance, which was at the British Open. We haven't seen him since then, and now we get a chance to see him at Riviera. And again, he says it's a course he knows well. That's why he's in it, and that's why. And I do think among mental edges that the great athletes have, he may be at the top. And just dominance over the mental aspect of the sport.
I think him, Michael Jordan, I'd put Tom Brady on that list. I'd put Joe Montana on that list, especially after a piece I just read about him. It's a short list of guys.
The reason I point to him.
The team sport guys versus individual sport guys, I think it's a different level, too.
The teams, yes, because the team sport guys that you're mentioning, I'm with you. They're still in some way relying on another teammate to benefit what they're doing. And with Tiger, we certainly know the history and the resume, and it speaks for itself. But seeing him withdraw just doesn't. That's when you have a coverage of a tournament and Tiger's in it, and they're not showing his game because it was that bad. I don't see him winning either, based on what you're saying, too.
By the way, this discussion makes me think about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan turned 60 years old today. And to celebrate his birthday, he gave a $10 million donation to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. That's the largest individual donation in that organization's history. That was his 60th birthday present, was to Make-A-Wish Foundation. Pretty cool. Also, makes me feel pretty old to think about Michael Jordan turning 60. So, two things there. Happy for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Not happy for me now feeling much older that Michael Jordan is 60.
And Jordan would take on anyone on the court right now.
Yeah, Jordan has had this obsession at different times that he wants to get back to his playing weight of 214. I think in his height, his playing, he had it was 214 or 218 at 6'6" he played at in the NBA. And he's, I've read things where he goes through these modes, I'm going to get back to my playing weight, never does it. Can never make it happen, but that he's trying to do that at different times.
Chad, we believe that Vegas always knows. There is a line in college hoops tonight, number 1 versus number 10.
I mean, get rich, I think is what Clay says.
Get rich kids.
I'm going to tell you how to get rich right now, and I will be utterly stunned if I come back tomorrow and I tell you to invest money into this thing we're going to talk about, and you don't win a lot of money doing it.
It's a weird line.
I put almost my entire account into this thing happening tonight. That is how I have
$11.
I have never felt more confident in the $17.19 I had left in my account and putting my money there than I will when we come back.
All right. I can't wait to discuss this because I want to know the reasons that could be why we're seeing this line in a top 10 matchup.
I'll give you the reasons why, but none of them make any practical sense.
I'm with you.
It's like wizardry and magic we're talking about here.
We got to dissect this next. OutKick 360 rolls on.
Another edition of the Trey Wallace Podcast. Happy to be joined by SEC Network analyst, ESPN. He does it all. Peter Burns joins us this afternoon. Peter, what's up, buddy?
I'd be doing a lot better if I wasn't 30 minutes late from the podcast and if I wasn't having to do it from like the meeting room at my gym because of the chaotic schedule. But again, it's just it never, when you got a 5-year-old and 3-year-old, all you got to know is that chaos is going to ensue in your life, and it has to.
It's just another day for the Burns household, man. You're all good, buddy. And look, there's been chaos not in your life. There's been chaos around the SEC in the last week or so. We've got Texas, Oklahoma. Kind of always figured they were going to reach that agreement and be able to join the conference early in 2024. But you look at it now and everything that has to happen between this week, and stuff has been going on behind the scenes, but scheduling, getting these guys ready to go for 2024 to get here. That's why I think spring meetings are going to be so big. But your takeaway of Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference a year early right when the new ESPN deal starts up.
Yeah, Trey, that was the whole deal. Like, it felt like we could really get into kind of what I considered college football 3.0. Like, college football 1.0 is what we grew up with. Like, old school football, just the way it is. College 2.0 or college football 2.0, I feel was like the pandemic and then the start of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. And I feel like college football 3.0 starts in 2024. Not only do you get Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, but remember we get USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Then you've got the expanded college football playoffs. So it kind of felt like all of this meant like, hey, in 2024, we're going to have a brand new kind of sport, frankly, you know, and especially postseason. So I'm fired up, and it means really a different level for the SEC. Like, you know, now we're not going to have divisions, which sucks, by the way. I'm not a fan of that. I understand why they do it, because it should, in theory, give you, you know, a guaranteed at least 2 teams in the college football playoff every single year. But this conference is good enough that, hey, I mean, the 3rd ranked team should always be good enough to get in as well, too. So, I mean, I would have stuck with East and West, but it helps with the scheduling a little bit more. But man, I'm fired up for it. I mean, it's but here's the deal. I'm not sure if Oklahoma and Texas are really fired up for it, because I'm not sure how good they're going to be once they enter game 1 of that 2024 season.
That's what's going to be the interesting part, because we're going to get Arch Manning, you know, in the Southeastern Conference to start things off. Now we'll see how he is during his time in Austin, see where he's at. But it does put up that point where, okay, they might not be as settled in as maybe they think they are in 2 years when they join the conference compared to where they are right now. And Venable's trying to build his program. Sarkisian trying to keep things on track there. You know, I know it's an advantage, Peter, to get them in the conference, but they might be joining the conference and hanging around that middle of the pack. It's not going to be just straight, okay, we're to the top.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, we just saw the difference in the top of the SEC and the top of the Big 12 in the national championship game. I mean, there's a pretty big damn difference, right? And I think that gap is only getting bigger. Now, I think that might be a little bit of an outlier because it was such a butt whooping, but still, yeah, I mean, the fact that if you're not reigning supreme in that conference, I use Texas as an example right now, and you can't beat the Texas Techs consistently. You can't beat the Baylors consistently. Well, what makes you think that you're going to be able to go into, you know, Athens, Georgia, or Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge and have a whole lot more success? I don't necessarily buy that.
Withrow has emptied his account.
I'm about to empty some more.
All $17 and what'd you say, 13 cents?
Something like that.
And it's between
Look, I'll put $20.
Okay,
on it. All
cool.
right. I have more than that in my account, but I'm thinking about laying more down right now.
Right.
In fact, when we're done with this segment,
well, yeah,
I'm
going to based on your reasoning for what. So it's Alabama, Tennessee tonight, number 1 versus number 10 in the country, and it's in Knoxville.
Yeah, it's probably the best college basketball matchup of the night. 2 weeks ago, this looked like it could be 1 versus 2 in America.
Right.
Tennessee was second in the country. Tennessee's lost 3 of 4. They lost at Florida where they played terrible. They won a game at home where they played terrible, 46-43, but beat a good Auburn team who's in the top 25. They played at Vanderbilt and played okay at times. Vanderbilt played very well. They lost at the buzzer on a 3. It was a well-executed play, but Tennessee should have won before that, made a couple big mistakes. They lost a game that if you played it 1,000 more times, they would win the game. All of them, but this one. That happened on Saturday where Missouri shot 58% from 3 and hit a running 30-footer at the buzzer after a lane violation and a missed free throw for Tennessee, and they lost by 1 again at the buzzer on a 3. So some bad luck for Tennessee. But Tennessee tonight at home against Alabama. Number 1 Alabama, best team in America. I don't know that it's that close right now from what I've seen in college basketball this year. Purdue's good. They've got a 7'5" guy down low. Alabama's got the best player in college basketball in freshman Brandon Miller, who's from right here in Nashville. They're playing great. Tennessee has stubbed their toe twice in the last week. Tennessee has a very daunting stretch ahead of them at Kentucky, at A&M after this game tonight. Yet somehow Vegas has Bama as right now a 2.5-point underdog to Tennessee. Now, here's the biggest part of this. Tennessee is going to be without Josiah Jordan-James, who is their most versatile defender and a senior leader, and they are going to possibly be without Julian Phillips, their 5-star freshman, who is a 6'8" versatile defender. These are the 2 guys who would probably be tasked with guarding Brandon Miller. Yet Tennessee is a favorite in this game. Hutton, I don't understand how.
What does Vegas know here, Chad?
I don't understand. The only thing that you could say is just, well, I think Tennessee's due and Bama's due. In other words, if you play the lottery and you play the percentages, Tennessee goes 2-0 this past week almost every time. And instead they went 0-2 at the buzzer in both of them. So is this Vegas just saying the law of averages will now benefit Tennessee and Alabama's gone through a nice stretch? They're due a 13% from 3 night or something crazy bad to where Tennessee wins at home. I don't understand how you don't put all your money on Bama on the money line.
I see this. I'm like, is there a suspension or an injury that Vegas knows about that we don't?
Well,
for Bama.
Bama's got a player, Bediako, who's their big man. But he is a game-time decision.
Rothstein says he
averages
towards
5.6 points per game and 5 rebounds. He's not one of their top guys.
Yeah.
He's a good big man down low. It would affect him if he was out and couldn't go, but he's a game-time decision that's likely to go.
All right, so
I'm laying heavy on
this.
Not just Bama plus 3, Bama to win outright. I think Bama wins by double digits based on where these teams are right now. Tennessee does not have the guys who can defend Brandon Miller. They're a great defensive team. Jemai Mashak, really good defender. You got to defend by committee against a guy like this. And against Bama, who is going to do nothing but penetrate and either take it right to the rack or kick it out for a 3. That's their game. They are taking dunks and threes. So you've got to rotate quickly. And when you take your 2 most versatile defenders off the court, that is a problem. I don't understand it. As a Tennessee grad, I'm even telling you this. Take Bama money line. This is the easiest money you will make all year.
Bet Bama.
If Tennessee wins this game, feel free to play this back tomorrow, what I'm telling you. But right now, mark my word, bet everything you have in your online account on Bama to win on the money line. You actually get a good little percentage based on that, not just to cover, to win outright. They will go to Knoxville and win tonight. This game has already been played. You'll have some handicappers tell you that. It's like the game's already been played. I've seen this game.
You can call and get the free recording.
It's been played. You are really relying on some magic in Thompson Bowling Arena. That Magic, by the way, that helped Missouri in front of a sold-out crowd never miss a three. They're banking, and their big guys are banking in threes. They had a 30-foot runner at the buzzer. That's what that Magic led to on Saturday.
Chad, the Pac-12 need a little magic with their TV deal.
It's some money.
Not looking great. Yeah, they need some money. So the idea was, at least from the Pac-12's perspective, is based on the $8 billion television contract that the Big Ten received, that would raise the tide, raise the ship of the Pac-12 and their upcoming media deal, which expires after 2024, or they need it before the 2024 season. The problem is nobody seems interested in acquiring the Pac-12 currently. I think someone will, but not at the price that is projected, which they were hoping to get around $40 million per school per year. That's nowhere close to being the case currently, Chad. And this, to me, spells doom because they had the chance to come up with some type of agreement with the Big 12. They didn't. When I say they had the chance to, you could come together, right, and have a massive conference of your own. Didn't. And I wonder what happens now, especially after USC and UCLA bolt.
Well, I think the big error was from Kliavkoff was when the Big 12 signed their deal, they got a lot of money and they got an upgrade in television packages from Fox and ESPN. So his thinking was probably, well, if they did it, we feel better about our conference, so now we're going to go and get more, without recognizing there's only so much money to go around. You got the CEO of Disney saying, we got to really get specific about where we pay for our sports rights moving forward, that everyone's going to get more selective, right? There's a recession coming. There's a lot of things going on. These sports rights are through the roof ridiculous. So you got to get picky and specific about where you spend your money. My point is, I don't know that there's enough money to go around for the Pac-12 right now. They're going to approach streaming services. And sure, Amazon or Apple TV Plus or someone could get in bed with the Pac-12, but is that really worth it for them? Is that going to drive subscribers, what they're all trying to do, and get more people signed up to watch Arizona State in hoops? Is that what's going to move the needle for Apple TV Plus? I don't think so. So, but I don't know how much money there is to go around for some of these conferences.
So, right currently, the SEC gets what, 60-something per school per year, roughly?
I don't know.
You've got $100 million coming for the Big Ten per season. I believe the ACC's around 33. They're locked into that. Big 12 just got a 6-year extension for $31.6 million. The Pac-12 felt like they were going to get upwards of 40, and that's not going to happen. And it's unlikely now that they get the same as the Big 12. So what becomes of the conferences that aren't going to be in the triple-digit 100 million range? Because the SEC eventually will.
Yeah.
And the rest won't.
Well,
and
look,
what becomes of college football there when you have truly, it already is, but truly the haves and the have-nots?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that everyone's going to not have money moving forward. My point is, when Disney's coming out and saying we're going to get selective about our sports rights we pay, NFL is going to be fine. The SEC is going to be fine.
Those are the brands.
The Big Ten is probably going to be fine. But if I'm the Big 12, they just signed a good deal. Good for them. But Pac-12 we're talking about now, ACC, I'm really concerned about what the future looks like and just how far behind you're going to fall from a media rights deal. What Major League Baseball has with local markets is going to be affected, like the Bally Sports, filing for bankruptcy, NBA, MLB. There's going to be a lot affected by that. I just don't know. I don't think that it would be a mistake to make the assumption that because the Big Ten makes so much and the SEC makes so much, well, we're going to make more too. That's not the case. One thing they can do that will help the conference, I believe, is go ahead and add SMU and San Diego State. They've met with them. The commissioner's been on their campus. I do think that will help them from a market standpoint. Is that going to help them land a media rights deal? Probably not.
Would you do that if you don't have the media rights deal in place? If you're those schools, would you make that move? And what happens to the conference itself whenever the grant of rights deal is up just prior to the 20? Are we going to see a max exodus of those programs? already being rumored, of course, Oregon, Washington.
Well, first question is absolutely I make the move because you're still going to get more in the Pac-12 than you would in the American Conference ultimately. So even if they're having a hard time getting what they want, they're going to make more by joining a power conference, and that would be the Pac-12. So, look, it's the least I would say it's the least of the Power 5 conferences right now based on their media situation, everything else. But you're hopping in there if you're SMU and San Diego State. So if they're after you, you make the jump and do that. I'm curious to see where all this goes. I'm curious to see the level at which streaming only plays a part in this and how they piece it together. I still don't think you're in a spot if you're in college sports where you're going to want to go streaming only. You're going to want over-the-air broadcast, cable in some way, not just streaming only. So it's going to be an interesting case study for the Pac-12.
LeBron James attended the Super Bowl and then didn't play for the Lakers, despite this
is a load management situation.
I guess, despite needing his team in the playoff push. They're currently 13th in the NBA standings right now out of the West, looking to get above that threshold where you've got the Utah Jazz in 10th. But, Chad, it's a bad look. It's a bad look, load management or not.
Oh, it's terrible. And he just looks like a guy who's playing out the string now until his son can come and play with him for that one season, to me. Terrible look when you're all over the place at the Super Bowl and you don't play the next night. To me, that I'd be like, now I have to play. Now that I was here, now I'm going to have to, show up and play. But look, LeBron James also knows he doesn't have to do anything because of his situation. The NBA has a stakes problem. What I mean by that is I don't feel like any of the regular season games have any stakes at all. Guys sit, guys rest. Doesn't matter at times. Everything that happens before Christmas doesn't matter.
Trade deadline.
This team's 3 games below 500. Doesn't matter. We just made a trade. We'll get in the playoffs, and then that's all that matters. When you tell us constantly with your actions that these games do not matter at all, why should I ever care about the NBA? In fact, I don't care about the NBA for this exact reason. Give me the NBA Finals where I'm watching 2 teams with stakes. That's about it right now. I don't even know if all the playoff series have true stakes when you get down to it. Load management is such a problem. The length of the season, which, by the way, was never an issue in the era of Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley and everyone else. I watched those games on WGN back in the day, and I felt like Michael Jordan was willing to give his left leg to beat the Milwaukee Bucks on a random Friday night in a game. That does not happen anymore in the NBA. They have a stakes problem. It's a huge issue with the league. It's one of the biggest reasons I don't watch. For the good of the sport, they should shrink the schedule and give them less games and put more stakes into the games they have. They'll never do it because it would mean less money, so they're not going to make that happen. They are killing their fan base, though, with some of these decisions because I just don't see where it matters. I really don't.
The dunk contest doesn't even matter, Chad.
Oh, that's one that truly doesn't matter now.
Davey Hudson has some graphics for us, and I know this has been announced. I've seen the headline, Davey. I have no idea. I can't even tell you who won last year in the dunk contest. Growing up, this was the thing. This was a favorite of ours. Chad, I can speak for you too.
Well,
and
going back to Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan and Tracy McGrady,
viewing,
right?
Appointment viewing. Davey, let us know who's, or at least we're going to try to guess who's in the dunk contest this year.
So what I wanted to do was, last night the NBA announced their 4 finalists for the slam dunk competition, and I thought, we can get some graphics. We can blur out the jersey. I don't even know if you could still tell me who the player was, even if I had who it was. So if you look at this graphic, anybody have a guess of who this is?
I'm going to take it a step further and say I have no clue who that is. Not only that, there's a logo on the shorts. I'm not even sure I know that logo.
So that's the Rockets
logo. Is it the Houston Rockets?
That is correct there. That was one
logo.
thing we did not get fixed in time. But this is Kenyon Martin Jr.
Okay. I loved his dad.
Yeah.
His dad was a great player. Back at Cincinnati back in the day, terrific player.
I'm going to go ahead and say he's the favorite
Nets,
to win. He's the favorite to win.
The New Jersey Nets. I mean, look, I would rather watch an all-star dunk competition that just consists of former past dunkers' kids, even if they're in the league or not.
Yeah,
I want to see them, like, even if one's like now a 38-year-old accountant, I want to watch them in the dunk competition over some of these guys. Who do we have next?
Now, what about this guy? I mean, this one, slim pickings. We got a white guy in the dunk contest. So any Anybody got an idea who this is?
I think I know this one only because I happened to I was trying to avoid this for this exercise.
Okay. Who is this, Chad?
It's a guy who almost went to Tennessee as a transfer at one point.
That's correct.
Mac McClung.
There you go.
From
All right.
Georgetown.
Georgetown, then went to Texas Tech. But here's the thing. Until yesterday, Mac was in the G League. He's for the blue coats for the 76ers. Now, yesterday they did sign him to a two-way contract, so he's technically a member of the Philadelphia 76ers at the moment. I'm thinking they do have a game tonight, but I'm thinking they did that just so they could put him in a Philadelphia jersey come the dunk contest.
That's exactly why.
That's funny.
Do they have another G League guy in?
I saw we don't need to spoil the exercise.
I don't know.
But
I'm buying into that theory if they have another G League guy.
I saw the uniform and I thought to myself when it was blurred out, I'm like, is that a practice jersey? Like Davey really is fooling us because that's like an NBA team's practice jersey. Oh no, it's a G League jersey.
If they have another G League player in, that's exactly what they've done. The NBA has they didn't have enough players to participate, so they put 2 G League guys in.
And our next guy, you guys aren't going to get this one, but this is Trey Murphy III. Any idea who he is playing for?
We can see it now.
Oh, well.
That's fine. The Pelicans. Trey Murphy III playing for the Pelicans. Okay.
I don't know who Trey Murphy III is. Did we know where he went to college?
He initially went to Rice.
He goes straight to G League.
And then he did transfer to Virginia and play for the Cavaliers for a minute. He was a first-round pick.
He's good at defense?
Yeah.
He's in the dunk contest.
If Tony Bennett's coaching you, you're good. You're good at defense. That's what I want is the best defender in the dunk competition. That's what
just
the NBA
anyone.
said.
Anyone to fill out the dunk contest roster. And then final one, Davey.
Yes, and then finally we have, again, I'll just throw this one out. This is Jericho Sims for the New York Knicks.
Okay.
I mean, played at Texas. There you go.
Yeah, the name sounded familiar. If you just showed me his picture with the blurred out jersey, couldn't tell you. Could have told you he was a college basketball player, not knowing the difference.
But this just goes to show how little this event even means. You mentioned Hutton, you couldn't name who won it last year. I was looking and I was like, I couldn't name who won it in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The last time I remember somebody winning it was when Zach LaVine did back-to-back in 15 and 16. But you had Obi Toppin last year, Anthony Simons in 2021, Derrick Jones in 2020, Hamidou Diallo in 19, and Donovan Mitchell in 2018. I've just wiped those from my memory.
Let's get a trampoline and get some mascots out there.
At least I've heard of Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
That was the one name. You were going through those names. And I'm like, I've heard of him. He's a good player.
All-Star Weekend's this weekend, right?
Yep. If you have nothing better to do on your Saturday at 8 Eastern, you can tune in on TNT and watch this.
I'll see the winning dunk.
I like the three-point shootout. And I for a time, I liked the different skills competitions. When they do the little obstacle course, I can watch that. Dunk competition, no thanks.
Coming up, watching the Super Bowl on a flight, and one screen was not on the Super Bowl, and this guy's getting demolished for it on social media. I'm actually on his side here. This is next, OutKick 360.
So can you explain to the viewers who might not know anything about MMA, and I got to be honest with you, I'm a casual UFC fan. I watch the big cards, but I'm not an expert in the nitty-gritty. What is the traditional path for an MMA guy if he's chasing to get to the top of that world? What's that look like? We know what it looks like for football. We know what it looks like for basketball. How's that play out for an MMA fighter?
I mean, that's the big difference between MMA and the traditional sports you're talking about. You have the collegiate, that line of going, and mixed martial arts, you don't really have. I mean, you have the wrestlers aspects, but being a good wrestler doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great MMA fighter. So it really looks a lot different for everybody. I mean, I was a traditional martial artist as a kid growing up, and then I found MMA was big because when we were on the same age when I was in high school, that's when the UFC started, Chuck Liddell and all those guys started building the sport like crazy. And that's how I found it. I was just originally actually a hockey player. I played competitive high school. I played junior hockey.
Oh, you played juniors? Where at?
Yep. I played on the East Coast in the EJ, East Coast Hockey League. So yeah. And not East Coast Professional Hockey League, but EJ was up in the north. It was good. It was good hockey. We played again. I mean, I see guys I played against that are in the NHL all the time, and I went to a high school literally just for hockey. I went to a prep school for a little bit just for hockey, and that was my initial that's what kind of gave me that competitive athletic part of myself that I was definitely able to apply into the military, and I was definitely able to apply into fighting as well. So what happened is my senior year of high school, I was playing juniors. I decided that I wanted to come back to high school to play for my high school just because of, I don't know, girls and stuff or something. I don't know why I did it, but I came back to my high school. I came back to my high school hockey team. I played it. We were doing really good. It was a playoff game, and my first shift of the game was like big playoff game. I blew on my shoulder. I went to go hit a kid, blew on my shoulder. So my following year, I missed a lot of like the times we hit tryouts in the summer to play for the teams in the next winter for like good junior teams. And that's kind of when I picked up MMA, because like I wasn't, you know what I mean? I kind of got more into MMA then. I was like, it just kind of gave me an outlet that wasn't, I always put all my energy into hockey. Now this gave me a separate outlet, and it was MMA, and I got competitive into that, did that for 2 years, and then until I eventually joined the military. So I think MMA fighters, they really could come from any branch, you know what I mean? But like for me, I played a lot of other sports growing up, and I think that helped me train like a professional athlete to be a professional MMA fighter.
So I got to ask, what's it like to get punched in the face?
Obviously I try not to get punched in the face as much as possible. I do not like to get punched in the face. I feel like, which is probably not a good thing, but over time you kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? I don't even blink my eyes when I get punched in the face. I remember when I used to get rocked, you get like this adrenaline feeling, like, oh my God, what happened? I don't really get that too much. It's either I'm getting knocked out or I'm just okay. So it's not the best feeling, but I try to avoid it. I try to be smarter, because concussions, you're hearing all these things about concussions this day and age, and I try to only do my hard sparring only when I need to for my fights. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to just, let's go spar. It's fun. I love it. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I try to be smart about what I do.
Well, when it comes to the preparing for a fight, now what's your record as a pro since you've gone pro?
I am 5-1.
5-1, and
yep.
That's wildly impressive. So if you were an NFL team with that winning record, you'd be amazing, right?
Chad, there was a story, New York Post, the viral screenshot of a airplane passenger's screen. The nicer airlines, right, will have the screens in every aisle, behind every seat.
Yeah. For every seat will have a TV in front
a
of
shot of the New York Post that they've posted this up, but where a plane passenger screen goes viral, should be jailed was one of the comments. But every screen was on the Super Bowl, except for this guy who was watching Hitch. And he's being just destroyed. The Post says, airplane passenger being crucified by sports fans after he was caught being the only person on the flight not watching the Super Bowl. Photograph taken inside the darkened cabin hilariously highlighted how everyone on the plane was glued to the NFL thriller between Kansas City and Philadelphia, which the Chiefs won 38-35. Now, I do find it funny that every screen's on here, and this is indicative of how many people watch the Super Bowl and are interested in it. Because I think if you walk down the aisle, we flew back on, up and down the aisle, and what people wanted to watch on the flight, if they could, no one's watching anything like this, where you could just literally, I could look at your screen and watch one game and watch something else, right?
We could have watched together.
But also, like, here's the one guy who's not a football fan and actually scheduled a flight accordingly. Unlike football fans who apparently schedule flights during the Super Bowl, this doesn't add up. The sports fans grilling this guy need to look in the mirror if you, in fact, would agree that all of these are football fans trying to watch the Super Bowl. That's just not the case here.
Let me throw out one more possibility. Maybe he is a huge Chiefs or Eagles fan, and he's got it recorded to start from the beginning when he gets home, and he knows that no one has their sound on with it, and he's like, you know what I haven't watched? That 2005 classic rom-com, Hitch. I'm going to watch that instead, and then I'm not going to find out what happens till I get home because I want to watch the comfort of my own home. Now, the fact he's watching Hitch probably tells me that he's not the biggest Eagles or Chiefs fan, and he's not doing that. But I like to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. I'm with you. Either he just doesn't like football, and he's not dumb like everyone else who's flying during the Super Bowl, or he's a diehard fan and he's like going to earmuff it all the way through the airport to get his bags and get in the car and then go home and try to go dark on the outcome of the game and watch when he gets home. Which that would be, by the way, that would be, I've had some pretty serious going dark on a game moments where I've made it through and I get there to watch it and start it from the beginning. This situation would be the most severe. If you could get through a plane ride where everyone's watching it, get through an airport, get all the way home and still not know what's happened and start it from the beginning, you've accomplished something.
Chad, what did you think of Hitch?
I loved it. I love rom-coms to begin with. I think it's one of Will Smith's best efforts. I really do. Kevin James as the lovable loser in this, really good. I'm trying to think of the love interest in it. I can see her right now, and I'm blanking on the name. She's good in it. I'm a big fan of Hitch. And I think I nailed the year, too. I think it was 2005.
I just can't remember it. I forgot Kevin James was in that movie.
Yeah. That may have been Kevin James' first film role was in this, from when he went from King of Queens to this show.
I can't remember it, but I can tell you it's probably better than 80 for Brady.
I saw it in theaters with my parents.
Hitch?
Yeah. I think on a Valentine's Day.
Bobby Carpenter next.
Has been in office nearly 2 years, and yes, it feels like much longer, but for these last 2 years plus the 2 prior he campaigned from the basement, the mainstream media along with fellow Democrats have covered for Joe. All they needed to do was get him over the finish line and into the White House. They successfully installed that man like the increasingly dim light bulb he is, and it worked. The successfully weaponized impeachments, the pandemic, and mass mail-in voting to get their guy elected. And he's been useful for the radical left. He's pushed through major climate change legislation and other Green New Deal policies disguised as infrastructure and inflation reduction. And he's done it all while barely being awake. It's an accomplishment, but not for the right reasons. But it's no secret Joe is sleeping. That whole weekend at Bernie charade can only work so long. The expiration date on it and Joe himself is coming. And in fact, it may have already come. Enter news of these batches of classified documents found in various Biden nooks and crannies. Even the mainstream media is covering it, and even leftist pundits and his fellow Democrats seemed alarmed at the findings. Or is it feigned shock and alarm? Follow me as we connect the dots in this very political game of Clue. They've known about at least one batch of these documents since early November of last year. They had to keep it quiet so they could keep the heat on Trump's documents and his alleged criminal activity. But now the cat is out of the bag, and it's my sincere belief that not only are Democrats okay with their man going down, but I'd go as far as to say it was Democrats who leaked the news. Why? Because they don't want to be pigeonholed into a feudal life support campaign leading up to 2024. They don't want Biden. These findings of classified documents at Casa, Closet, and Garage a la Biden makes it a lot easier and a lot cleaner for them to move away from Joe. Yes, if you listen closely, hear that? You can hear a man in the Sacramento, California governor's mansion readying his hair gel. You can hear a very disappointing diversity pick greasing up her broom. A man named Chasten picking out decor for the White House holiday display. And if you listen really, really closely, you can even hear a nasty woman somewhere in Chappaqua, New York, steaming a pantsuit. They are sitting on ready. Wait for it. But before we go today, I'd like to wish a very, very happy birthday to
Well, look, my wife has a rule in her family. When somebody's birthday, you sing happy birthday. You ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alan. Happy birthday to you. Well.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Chad, some say we would never make it this far.
Many
the final
said
hour
that.
on this Wednesday.
Many doubted us.
We're glad you're with us. We had a fun show. We've got Clay Travis, who will join us in about 20 minutes from now. Looking forward to that. We'll get some football discussion coming straight from Bobby Carpenter in a matter of minutes. Chad gave betting advice earlier. OutKick bets. OutKick.com/bet is where you can go and you can follow us. Load up on the Crimson Tide.
Alabama money line. They are a 2.5 to 3.5 point underdog based on what book you visit in Knoxville tonight. Tennessee definitely without one starter, probably without two. And those two starters are the best two guys to defend Brandon Miller, who may be the best player in the country for Alabama. Load up on the Tide tonight. Trust me.
I was asked right before we came back from break, hey, is Bobby good? And I said, he's Mr. Dependable for the show.
He's always good.
He always makes time for this show, and for that we're very grateful. Bobby Carpenter joins us, SiriusXM analyst and host for college football and Channel 84. Bobby, good to see you, man.
Hey, it's great to see you guys. I appreciate you kind of sliding me around here. You know, spring starting, so we got spring workouts, and whether that's college guys, you know, NFL dudes, or whether that's, you know, my junior high son, they've got some workouts going on, trying to make sure I can help out and get those guys lifting some weights. So appreciate you guys being considerate there for me. And as I kind of settle back in from getting back from Hawaii this week.
Oh, no, see, that's the little jab at the end.
I
Hawaii.
like that nugget at the end. I've got all this stuff going on, and I've got to resettle myself after Hawaii.
What time did the Super Bowl kick off in Hawaii?
So about 1:30, and I don't know how they do it out there. It was a great deal I was a part of. Is an Armed Forces entertainment tour. It was myself, Darren McFadden, Dexter McCluster, Brian McKinney, Brandon Carr and Bernard Berrien, and went out there to Hawaii, entertained the troops on Wheeler and Schofield and Pearl Harbor and all the different bases, put on some youth camps. And then on Sunday, we started watching the Super Bowl, and our van was a little late for picking us up at noon, and we were worried we were going to miss the start of it because it's about 45 to 50 minutes. And the Super Bowl, I think, kicked off around 1:25 out there. So definitely early enough for me to get a red eye on the way back.
What did you? I mean, we'll ask Super Bowl questions here. What did you make of the performance by Patrick Mahomes post getting hit on the ankle, where you could see he was grimacing from that point forward?
Yeah, when I looked at that game, for them to win Kansas City, I'm like, their three dudes have got to be elite. Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones have to be absolutely dominant. And then they're going to need a little luck. And Pat Mahomes, when he hurt his ankle, I'm like, because at the beginning he looked good. He's moving around. You felt good about everything. But when he hurt his ankle, I'm like, man, if he can't move in the second half, that Eagles rush might take over. They're already down 10. They had the catch that wasn't a catch by Devonta Smith there at the end of the first half, kind of helped him out a little bit. And then Jalen Hurts gave him a little bit of manna from heaven, and then Ladarius Toney has the return. So they needed it all to go right. And I know everybody's loving on Pat Mahomes because his performance was epic. Philadelphia is a better football team. They have a better roster, and they played a better game outside of the special teams mishap on the punt return, outside of Jalen Hurts giving the ball up and having the scoop and score. And then the fact that they couldn't ever stop him in the red zone. My goodness, guys, they kept playing man. I'm like, what are we doing? Why? Make him get it done in zone. Andy Reid is smart. You've got to change it up on him, and Pat Mahomes can find the open guy. But his performance was terrific. And at halftime, I guarantee you guys, he went in there, whether it's Toradol, lidocaine, Novocaine, whatever it is, like, it's the Super Bowl, man, at that point. Like, and you're tasked with potentially winning your second Super Bowl MVP, and that's rarefied air right now. And so Pat Mahomes put on a performance for the ages, and he absolutely had to for his team to win.
And you mentioned Philly. I mean, Philly wins that game, Bobby, if we don't have the 30-minute plus halftime, because Andy Reid and company, they were able to actually make adjustments. The NFL halftime's at 12 minutes. You can't really do all that much in 12 minutes. But at the Super Bowl halftime, there's plenty of time to adjust what you're doing, and it worked. They came out and scored on every possession they had.
Well, part of it, too, I think it gave Pat Mahomes a little bit of time to probably get some treatment, look at that ankle a little bit more, relax. I mean, they said from the time he went out to the time he came back on the field, you're talking about almost, I think, close to an hour. So he had a lot of time, obviously the elongated halftime. And, guys, this is why experience matters. And I'll never put guys in just the not able to get it done, the loser category. Remember how long we had Andy Reid in that couldn't get it done category, where he'd get the Eagles to the NFC Championship, couldn't bust the door in. Then they get there against the Patriots, and then they lose in just another phenomenal game. Like Andy Reid, he's not a big game coach. That's what we just gave him, that title, not a big game coach. Well, you know what? He took an inferior squad and won against a better unit who played a pretty darn good game outside of those two big mishaps because he was more experienced. He saw what they were doing. He was more composed. And not that Nick Sirianni coached a bad game, but that's what a guy who's in his mid-60s who eats a lot of cheeseburgers and has coached a heck of a lot of football games, that's what you get when you get that type of experience.
See the best head coach in the league currently, right now, as of today, Andy Reid?
He's up there. I mean, Bill Belichick still, he's still got, that mantle to me just with everything that he's done. Sean Payton getting back in muddies it a little bit. But I don't know if you could definitively say that there's anyone you would take over Andy Reid, especially when you let him build his teams. Because if you look at his teams, man, he has a formula. And you go look at what he did in Philadelphia, and then you look at what he's built in Kansas City, and he's done it really in the same way. And he's done it with the same type of parts, the same type of pieces. Heck, Spagnuolo, I mean, I know he was in New York, but he was there with Jimmy Johnson when he was the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia. They're running the same stinking defense. Like, it's really just Philly 2.0 with a new set of cast and characters.
Bobby Carpenter, our guest, throughout your career, is it weird? Is it when you look at the new Hall of Famers that are announced, Pro Football Hall of Fame, Is it odd seeing names that you played with or played against in some ways throughout your career? For instance, and Davey helped us out here, Rondé Barber, Darrelle Revis, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, Joe Thomas. At some point, your career overlapped their career, and now they're headed to Canton.
I played in a game against every one of those guys. So, played with DeMarcus in Dallas for 4 seasons, and fortunate enough to play with Zach Thomas in Dallas for what was his final year. And DeMarcus, I knew was going to be a first ballot guy. I mean, it was funny. I would always, guys who I played with, who I thought were going to be Hall of Famers, and you kind of get that sense, especially if they were older, but when they were young, it's kind of betting on futures. And I'm not a big memorabilia guy, but I've got P.O., I've got Witten, I've got Romo, I've got DeMarcus jerseys, I got a Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford, I've got a Tom Brady, and I got my man Zach Thomas. And it was especially special for me to see Zach get in, because if you look at Zach's career, it's about the same as Brian Urlacher's with numbers and everything he's put up. My qualifications for to be a Hall of Famer, you've had to be a dominant player at your position for a generation. And Zach Thomas was a 5-time first-team All-Pro and a 2-time second-team All-Pro. When you're talking about guys like Urlacher and Ray Lewis and all these great middle linebackers, and he was able to garner those honors. And he was so influential in my career. It was my 3rd season. And, he's a guy who had a poster on the wall in high school. I used to tell him that, and he laughed. He said, "Man, you made me feel old." I'm like, "Zach, dude, you came out in '96. Like, I was still in middle school." But he was so patient. He was such a great teacher. And you look at him, and he used to joke. He's like, "Man, if I would have been blessed with your skills, I've been way better." He's, "I'm 5'9", maybe 10, and run a 4.7." But he was so instinctual. He was such a good player, such a great leader. And I'm so happy for him to get in, because I think he personifies what you'll love about football. The undersized guy who, gets in, not a first-round pick, slides in the middle rounds, gets a chance, and then all of a sudden his desire to study the game, to always be his best, that begins to shine through. And, he was kind of on some Miami teams that in between Marino and, whenever, like, they were kind of in purgatory where they had great defenses and not much on offense. And Zach was the linchpin. He was the keystone of all those. And if he would have been in Chicago or New York or Dallas, I think it would have been like, boom, he's automatically in, like Urlacher. But he never really had that postseason run, and he never really probably had as much limelight as he should, because he's not a vocal guy. He does it behind the scenes. And honestly, he called me that morning, and I was in Hawaii, and I was so pumped for him, because he deserves to be there, and I can't wait to be a part of it for him.
Well, I hope you don't mind me asking, what did he do for you in year 3 specifically that you're pointing to that makes you emotional now?
Just, first of all, getting a chance to know him. Like, I mean, he's in his 13th year, and he wore number 54 in Miami. And they're like, "Man, Zach's coming. He's going to want that number." I'm like, you know what? If he really wants it, like, I wouldn't sell it to him, but we'd have a conversation, and I would have been fine with that. And he told me, he goes, "No, man, that's yours. It's a new look. It's a new me coming here. It's a new team. I got it." And so, like, that right away was great. We used to go to dinner a lot on Monday nights, and just talk about life and everything, and his experiences in Miami, and just the process of evolving as a man throughout the game, and then also in the off season. I'll never forget, like, and this is, older guys, they don't have to do this, and people get upset, like, they don't want to mentor. Well, it's not your job. You're not getting paid to come in here and mentor guys. You're getting paid to play. But you know what? If you want to do it, go for it. And Zach Thomas, we sit there and watch film, and he'd show me what he watched and taught me how to watch film. Like, I thought, I'm a coach's son. I grew up around the game. But he started giving me little nuggets to look for and how to get all this stuff done. And his big thing was, man, they're like, be really good at one thing. And he's like, here's some stuff that you're good at. He's like, that I think you could really excel. He's like, just go try to be the best at that. He goes, it's better to be a specialist and be elite at something than to be kind of average. And people, everyone's second choice. Go be their first choice at something. And so work at that every day. And I took that advice to heart. And even after he got done, he sent me texts after games and stuff of what he saw me doing. And it was awesome. It was awesome. Man, I felt like he was a friend, a coach, and like I said, a guy who I idolized and aspired to be when I was younger.
Very cool. Bobby Carpenter, our guest on OutKick 360. Bobby, when you look at Derek Carr, and now that he's a free agent and he's already visited or talked with the Saints, if you want to stick it to the Raiders and you want to go somewhere and have success and win big, what is the best landing spot for Derek Carr right now at this point in his career to go and do that?
I don't know if they can get rid of Mr. Unlimited, but if you could stay in division and go play for Sean Payton in Denver, that might be the ultimate one right there. I mean, if I was Derek Carr, I've got a chance to meet Derek a couple times, and I'm telling you guys, him and his brother are as good of humans as they come. Like, God doesn't make him much better than that. And I mean, if I was him, give me a 1-year league minimum. We'll figure out a way to work this thing on the cap. I want to go in there and compete with Russ. And I'm guessing Sean Payton would probably like that and probably welcome it because, Derek does a lot of things really well. They've got great weapons, and he would be a guy that, is playing obviously in division. That's obviously kind of a long shot. I would say New Orleans, possibly the Jets. If you can stay on the AFC side, because he's more familiar with that, given the fact he's rotated through, that division, that conference a little more. The Jets have a really nice roster around them, and that you'd have to think there's a little bit of familiarity there with their head coach, obviously being out in the Bay before the Raiders moved. So that I would try to stay in the AFC. The Jets would probably make the most sense. But I don't dislike the Saints either, because I think they have a pretty good roster. They just need a trigger man. And I'm telling you guys, Derek Carr is a good quarterback. I mean, is he Patrick Mahomes? Probably not. But he's a guy that with a good roster around him, I think he can take you to and win a Super Bowl. He's just never had any defense in the Raiders organization, as we well know. It's been an absolute mess for really the last decade.
Yeah, and I think the best way to stick it to him, Chad's a good question. It's a great answer, by the way, with Denver and the 1-year deal. The best way to stick it to the Raiders is to choose a team where you can win. So I would avoid Carolina, Houston.
I think the Saints could be a good, decent option with the teams that he's talking to.
Just tying in other factors like Tampa, replacing Brady. Again, just follow me here. That's where Gruden was traded to. He wins the Super Bowl. You could take Carr there. I'm not saying they win the Super Bowl, but you get my point. Like, you could stick it to the Raiders that way too. There's not many other great options that are quarterback needy that aren't bad. If you based on the quarterbacks that are currently in place, who they, would be a lateral move, so to speak, to go get Derek Carr.
The three teams you mentioned, the Jets, the Bucs, and I think the Saints, are all teams that have pretty good rosters that have had subpar quarterback play. Derek Carr is going to give you above average, probably good. So, I don't want to say great, but he's right there in that fringe and can probably be a 6 to 10, 12 quarterback in the league. And if you have good talent around it, you're going to win games if you have competent coaching.
Who would be the better option to win with the Titans, Ryan Tannehill or Derek Carr?
Ooh, that's a good one right there. I think Tannehill's done a great job in his resurgence with the Titans. I think that he's a little sporadic still, and you see occasionally him make a poor decision. You'll see a ball fly, and then he gets gun shy. He won't throw it in. Like, Derek Carr's been in really a bad situation his entire career and has found a way to, never pushes blame off, always shoulders it, and he just goes out there and continues to play. I would say that it's not going to be a Herculean upgrade, but I would think Derek Carr would be an upgrade over Ryan Tannehill.
By a notch, you're saying, just barely.
Yeah.
Bobby, great visit, man. Appreciate the always being right on time with the show. And, man, we should get Zach on the show here with you at some point.
Oh, that would be great. Now, Zach's not a big talker. He tried to do some media stuff in Miami, but we could maybe pull some stories out of him. He's got a lot.
We had him on one time. He was excellent. This was a couple years back whenever he was a finalist. But he was really, really good going through his career and how he made it to the league and all that. So I'd love that, man. And, again, get back to coaching. Good luck with all the workouts.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks,
Bobby
Carpenter. Check him out, SiriusXM, channel 84.
A little bit of breaking news that we'll definitely ask our next guest, Clay Travis, about the domestic violence charge against former Texas basketball coach Chris Beard has been officially dropped. DA Jose Garza has announced. Prediction, he will be back coaching at a decent job next season.
And what's to come of the contract that Texas is pointing to in the language?
Could be Notre Dame, could be any number of places, and whoever hires him is going to trip all over themselves to explain why they did and why there's really nothing to see here, and it was a mistake and a bad night, but things were, misportrayed in the story and all of this. Chris Beard is too good of a coach to not be right back in it now that he's now officially not getting charged with a crime.
Clay's stories from the Super Bowl, Eric Bieniemy being in the headlines for not being hired, Chris Beard having the charges officially dropped, and more. Clay Travis with us next on OutKick 360.
Another edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined by SEC Network analyst, ESPN. He does it all. Peter Burns joins us this afternoon. Peter, what's up, buddy?
I'd be doing a lot better if I wasn't 30 minutes late from the podcast, and if I wasn't having to do it from like the meeting room at my gym because of the chaotic schedule. But again, it's just it never. When you got a 5-year-old and 3-year-old, all you got to know is that chaos is going to ensue in your life, and it has to.
It's just another day for the Burns household, man. You're all good, buddy. And look, there's been chaos not in your life. There's been chaos around the SEC in the last week or so. We've got Texas, Oklahoma. Kind of always figured they were going to reach that agreement and be able to join the conference early in 2024. But you look at it now and everything that has to happen between this week, and stuff has been going on behind the scenes, but scheduling, getting these guys ready to go for 2024 to get here. That's why I think spring meetings are going to be so big. But your takeaway of Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference a year early right when the new ESPN deal starts up.
Yeah, Trey, that was the whole deal. Like, it felt like we could really get into kind of what I considered college football 3.0. Like, college football 1.0 is what we grew up with. Like, old school football, just the way it is. College 2.0 or college football 2.0, I feel was like the pandemic and then the start of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. And I feel like college football 3.0 starts in 2024. Not only do you get Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, but remember we get USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Then you've got the expanded college football playoffs. So it kind of felt like all of this meant like, hey, in 2024, we're going to have a brand new kind of sport, frankly, and especially postseason. So I'm fired up, and it means really a different level for the SEC. Like, now we're not going to have divisions, which sucks, by the way. I'm not a fan of that. I understand why they do it, because it should, in theory, give you, a guaranteed at least 2 teams in the college football playoff every single year. But this conference is good enough that, hey, I mean, the 3rd ranked team should always be good enough to get in as well, too. So, I mean, I would have stuck with East and West, but it helps with the scheduling a little bit more. But man, I'm fired up for it. I mean, it's but here's the deal. I'm not sure if Oklahoma and Texas are really fired up for it, because I'm not sure how good they're going to be once they enter game 1 of that 2024 season.
That's what's going to be the interesting part, because we're going to get Arch Manning, in the Southeastern Conference to start things off. Now we'll see how he is during his time in Austin, see where he's at. But it does put up that point where, okay, they might not be as settled in as maybe they think they are in 2 years when they join the conference compared to where they are right now. And Venable's trying to build his program. Sarkisian trying to keep things on track there. I know it's an advantage, Peter, to get them in the conference, but they might be joining the conference and hanging around that middle of the pack. It's not going to be just straight, okay, we're to the top.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, we just saw the difference in the top of the SEC and the top of the Big 12 in the national championship game. I mean, there's a pretty big damn difference, right? And I think that gap is only getting bigger. Now, I think that might be a little bit of an outlier because it was such a butt whooping, but still, yeah, I mean, the fact that if you're not reigning supreme in that conference, I use Texas as an example right now, and you can't beat the Texas Techs consistently. You can't beat the Baylors consistently. Well, what makes you think that you're going to be able to go into, Athens, Georgia, or Tuscaloosa, or Baton Rouge and have a whole lot more success? I don't necessarily buy that.
Clay Travis joins us on OutKick 360 as we welcome you back. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, Clay does the blood bank lock, the guarantee.
Yeah.
You've got one tonight.
I've got one. Alabama money line over Tennessee. Tennessee without 2 starters. I don't care that it's in Knoxville. I have no idea, Clay, how Tennessee's a 2.5-point favorite after losing on back-to-back buzzer beaters to Vandy and Missouri this past week. Vegas may be expecting some craziness to happen tonight, but that's my blood bank guarantee tonight. What do you think about that bet?
The line would make me nervous because, look, and this is just kind of talking broadly.
Yeah.
Fans tend to be hyper irrational. That is, in a 40-minute game, all sorts of craziness can happen. And I think the last 2 games, if you look at Tennessee's loss against Vanderbilt on a last-second 3 after missing the front end of a 1-and-1, that was a statistical improbability. And then if you look at Missouri doing the exact same thing, hitting a 3 at the buzzer after a missed front end of a 1-and-1 free throw, by the way, by the same guy. I'm not sure that's ever happened in the history of college basketball.
An
right?
80% career free throw shooter also was the guy who missed all 3 of those free throws ultimately.
So my point on that is, if what would the expectation be if Tennessee had won both of those games? That means one shot had gone different. I think there would be a lot of optimism in Knoxville about beating Alabama. And so what Vegas does is try to be completely unobjective and just trust the numbers. And look, I mean, Alabama went on the road, what was it, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and lost by, I think, 25 at Oklahoma. I expect for it to be an absolutely raucous environment in Thompson Bowling tonight. I'm looking forward to watching the second half. I have to take my son to baseball practice for the first half. But I expect that Tennessee will give Alabama a good run. And I also think, from a probabilistic perspective, it's unlikely that Alabama is going to go undefeated throughout the course of the SEC. So I would be nervous about touching that number because I don't have the gambling splits in front of me. I'd actually be curious to know what they are. But I would bet that 85-90% of the money is on Alabama to cover as the underdog. And that means that Vegas knows, when you make Tennessee a favorite in that scenario, that a lot of the money is going to come in on Bama. So I would be very nervous about touching it.
Clay, you were there for the Super Bowl. What was it like watching Rihanna at the halftime show in the building? Can you really tell what's going on when you're watching it?
I think football in general is a televised product. So, and I think that's particularly the case for a halftime concert in the Super Bowl. By which I mean it's not really designed for the 70,000 people who are there in person. It's designed for, I think it ended up being 118 million who were watching live at halftime for the Rihanna performance, which I believe was the peak of the overall Super Bowl viewership over the course of the entire, 3.5 or 4 hour window. And so it was cool. It was really interesting to see how much they had to do to put that stage together and how many different moving parts were associated with it. And I think you had maybe a better comprehension of how high she was into the crowd, in the air on those stages and her dancers and everybody else. But I thought in general, I've been to 2 Super Bowls in person. I think Bruno Mars may have performed alongside of the Red Hot Chili Peppers for the other one. I went to the New York City Super Bowl, and this was the second time that I had been to a Super Bowl in person to watch. And both times I thought the production value of the performance was way in excess for the television viewers, which makes sense because what is the 70,000 in attendance? Like, roughly 1,000 or less of the overall audience that's watching that live. So I think that makes a decent amount of sense.
Totally agree with you, too. The 2 I've seen, Maroon 5 and then Shakira and J-Lo. That's the Shakira and J-Lo I was begging to get around a TV. But it's just a big light show. You can't really see or hear much of anything because of the TV production. Clay Travis with us. From OutKick, OutKick's president and founder. Clay, Eric Bieniemy didn't get hired yet again as a head coach. And CNN, Jake Tapper, Bob Costas, others, Ryan Clark, want everyone to believe it's because of the color of his skin. It would take a lot of effort on behalf of the league to not hire Eric Bieniemy with all the other minority head coaches who have been hired over the time he has interviewed in 14 or 15 different places.
He must not interview well. And again, I think if he wants to be a head coach, he probably needs to leave Kansas City because most people are going to say that is Andy Reid's offense. I would think it's the combination of both those things. My argument in general, and this is nothing new, I've been making this argument for years now, the NFL is the ultimate meritocracy, by which I mean if you perform, they will hire you almost no matter what. Ray Lewis was charged with double murder, literally went on trial for double murder, and they have a statue to him outside of the Baltimore Ravens stadium, and he is still employed on a regular basis as a commentator on the NFL. Deshaun Watson has been accused by 30 different women of sexual assault civilly, and he just got the largest contract in the history of football. Those are just a couple of examples. I've said before, if O.J. Simpson were a quarterback and he beat double murder charges in today's NFL, I think maybe a team would sign him, right? And that's because Al Davis was right. The NFL's mantra is just win, baby. So if people thought that Eric Bieniemy was an incredible asset that would win at a high level, then I think he would have already been hired. I think the challenge that is out there in general, and look, I put it this way, the quarterback matters far more than the head coach does anywhere. Okay, let's start with that. I think that you trade away Tyreek Hill. It's supposed to be a rebuilding year. And Patrick Mahomes is so good that he goes to his 5th straight AFC championship and also then wins his 2nd Super Bowl. I think there's a lot of people out there. Remember we used to have the debate, who's more responsible for the Patriot dynasty, Bill Belichick or Tom Brady? It's no longer a debate. Without Tom Brady, Bill Belichick looks like a very average NFL head coach. Tom Brady went and won a Super Bowl with Bruce Arians, and now everybody, I think, acknowledges it's Brady. So I think the challenge that Eric Bieniemy has is twofold. One, Andy Reid, top 5 NFL head coach. 2, Patrick Mahomes, clearly the best coach in the best quarterback, I think, in the NFL right now. If both of those things are true, and Eric Bieniemy is not the primary decision maker on the offense for the Kansas City Chiefs, then a lot of people are saying, okay, without Andy Reid and without Patrick Mahomes, what does Eric Bieniemy bring to the table? And right now, it's not just one team, it's lots of teams that have had an opening. They are saying, I think the answer is not very much. So if I'm Eric Bieniemy at this point, I'm wondering, do I need to go somewhere else where I'm going to have the opportunity to prove myself in order to get that elusive head coaching opportunity in this league?
Clay,
but I don't think, by the way, it's a race-based.
Right.
I don't think it's a race-based decision.
Right. Strahan interviewed Damar Hamlin on Good Morning America and asked him directly, 24 years old, perfectly healthy, no background of a heart condition. He confirmed that based on the tests and the medicals and the physicals that he had gone through. Asked Damar Hamlin what doctors told him was the cause for the cardiac arrest that he suffered on January 2nd. And he paused. He said, and he paused, and then he says, I don't want to get into that. What does that open the door for speculation, for discussion, and now for the NFL, which, of course, had the COVID vaccination mandatory shots and really put everyone in the line of fire if they didn't do it for their teammates? Aaron Rodgers comes to mind, for instance.
Yeah, well, one, I think the first thing is the NFL needs to know what allegedly caused Damar Hamlin's heart condition because they need to do whatever they can to try to hope that never happens again, right? So it's almost like when a plane goes down, you go get the black box and you try to figure out what caused the plane to go down. Not because you can necessarily save or change what happened to the individuals on that plane, but because you want to make sure that there isn't something that is occurring that is making that likely to happen again. So, in other words, you want to deconstruct what happened to Damar Hamlin to try to hopefully keep it from happening to any other player. So that's number one. That's what I've said from the get-go. I hope that is being done. Number two, when Damar Hamlin doesn't answer it, it raises a couple of questions in my mind. One, he may not believe what the doctors are telling him. 2, they may not know. 3, he may be filing a lawsuit down the line and not want to give away some of those indications. But what I would say is this. We know that heart attacks that have killed people are up 30% among 25 to 44-year-olds. It used to be very rare that a 25 to 44-year-old, particularly an athlete, would have a heart-related condition that would lead to potential death. We know that nationwide, 30% increase in heart attacks has occurred between people aged 25 to 44. I want to know why that is. And so if Damar Hamlin could be involved as a part of that test group, I think that's very important information that we should have. My hypothesis would be, hey, what has changed in the past couple of years? We've had an increase in this death that we know is 30%. The job of science is to try to figure out what might have happened. Maybe it's that so many people got COVID and their hearts were weakened, and that has led to an increase in overall heart attack deaths. That's a theory. That's a possibility. Another one would be that the hundreds of millions of people in the United States who got the COVID shot, many of them 25 to 44, have as a result had a weakened heart that has made them more susceptible to heart attack than they were before. That's another hypothesis. I think that should be tested. I'm 43. I never got the COVID shot. I know that I've had COVID at least twice. Am I at an elevated risk for heart attack because of multiple COVID infections? I'd be interested in knowing. is someone out there who got 2 COVID shots and 2 boosters and is 26 years old. Are they at an elevated risk of having a heart attack because of that? That's something that I would want to know. To me, that's something that every American should want to know.
Totally agree. Well said. Clay Travis on with us on OutKick 360. Clay, another story broke just before you came on. Chris Beard at Texas. Officially, the DA says no charges. All charges dropped against him. You talked about meritocracy of sports. If you're really good at something, people will give you a second chance and give you a job again. What's the likelihood he's back as a head coach next season now that the charges were officially dropped?
I don't know because I think partly, you're going to have to do your own investigation as to why the charges were dropped. Because remember, again, just being fair, beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard. There probably are not witnesses in this case other than him and his, I think, fiance girlfriend who was alleging domestic assault. Why were those charges dropped? Has there been new evidence that emerged, or, as is often the case, has she just refused to cooperate with investigators, meaning there is a real difficulty in proving that a crime happened? It's not uncommon. One of the real difficulties of domestic violence is very often the alleged victim, after time, says, oh, I don't want charges to be pressed. I don't think they have kids, but a lot of times mom doesn't want to press charges against dad. A lot of times the couple stays together, and it's kind of hard to stay together as a couple if mom is testifying against dad on the witness stand about domestic violence. So this is not uncommon. Texas has already fired him. Again, I would want to do the deep dive to figure out what the particulars are of this case before I decided to make a choice in a college setting. I also think college versus pro factors in here because if you're on a college campus, you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old boys and girls, relatively young people, as opposed to professional athletes in a college, in a professional sports setting, which may be a substantially different environment. So I would bet that his career is not over, but I would also bet that it's going to take a while for him to sort of redeem himself. And it may require that he go to a lower level as an assistant coach before he can come back as a head coach again.
Clay, would you rather have Derek Carr or Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback?
I mean, I think it's like saying, would you rather, bet heads or tails on, a coin flip?
Yeah.
I think they're kind of equal probability guys. If I were the Titans, I would move on from Ryan Tannehill if I could. I don't think personally that the Titans, for instance, are very close to winning a championship. So I almost would rather go back and just start to work on the rebuild as opposed to thinking, if we change the quarterback, suddenly we're going to have a team that is going to have a lot more success. Whoever the quarterback is, nobody could block for him last year. The offensive line was a sieve. The wide receiver talent is maybe the worst in the NFL. So there are a lot of holes that have to be filled on the Titans, for instance. And I don't think there's that much difference between Tannehill and Carr. And the same thing I would say is true whether you're a Jets fan or if you were a Raiders fan or a 49ers fan or any team out there that is looking around the Saints thinking, hey, we're in the quarterback market. I think there are 3 tiers in the NFL. There's like 10 or 12 teams that are like, we've got our stud. We think he can win us a Super Bowl. There's 10 or 12 that are like, we don't have a stud, but he's not awful, so we're not going to fall completely apart. And then there's 10 or 12 that are like, we're desperately in need of a quarterback. I think the Titans are in that middle sphere, and I think the Raiders were in that middle sphere. So I think Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, very functionally equal, even quarterbacks, but both in that, like, hey, we're probably not going to win a championship with either. If I were Derek Carr, the analogy that I would prefer is, hey, he's Matthew Stafford, a guy who has balled out for a long time with the Raiders. That organization's just so dysfunctional he couldn't win at a high level. But look what happens if he ends up in the right place. Matthew Stafford worked for a long time with the Detroit Lions and nothing worked. They couldn't even win a playoff game. And then suddenly he goes to the Rams and wins the Super Bowl first year there.
Clay Travis has been our guest. Clay, by the way, the column at OutKick about the woman who calls Bumble to match her friend's sync. Haven't chores been done by guys dating girls for years?
Look, hot girl privilege is a thing. And every man who is listening to this has done innumerable, almost, I bet, things that he would never have done if the woman asking him to do it was not attractive. Right? I was talking about this on my show the other day. There are no calendar days that are designed just to praise men, right? Like there's not one, not even really Father's Day. But if you think about it, Valentine's Day exists for women. Anniversaries of all stripes pretty much exist for women. Mother's Day rises up and dunks on Father's Day, balls in the face style, like Scottie Pippen on Patrick Ewing back in the day. Like, there is no functional equivalent where women run around like, I hope I don't screw this day up because otherwise my relationship could be in tatters. Men are constantly on the hook. There's guys listening to us right now that have been broken up with because they didn't take Valentine's Day or an anniversary seriously enough. So, again, hot girl privilege is a thing. It's the most powerful privilege that exists in America today.
Clay Travis, always great. Enjoy the visit.
Tough to argue with those facts.
Yeah.
Tough to argue with them.
They're $9 now as a Valentine's Day card, we learned.
We found that out earlier.
Yeah. Clay, thank you.
Appreciate you all. Have a good day, boys.
Yep. Same to you. Clay Travis joins us Wednesdays here on the show.
He's got a practice to head to.
That's right.
I can sympathize with that.
Well, you had one yesterday, right?
Yeah, we tried out the indoor facility close to my house.
Was it up to your
It was nice.
specifications?
It was cool, yeah.
Good.
We got to mix in some little team races that the girls really love to break up any station work with, hey, let's all get together and race now. We'll put you in groups of 4 and race. Fun times.
Where sports have to the level now of how old is this group?
Well, this is
8,
6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah, 8's
that
the
you can
oldest
now
age.
go get an indoor practice facility. I mean, we just wouldn't have been able to practice if it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's $100 to rent, for an hour and a half. And there was a team after us. There was a team of probably 10, 11-year-old girls, I'd say, that came in at 7:30 to 9.
But none in your league that you saw.
No.
No, you're in it to
It's
win
tough. Like, we do have a few 7:30 games on, Friday night. But 7:30 to 9 for 6, 7, 8-year-old girls that's a late night. It's a late night to be playing because you're not getting to bed till 10:30, 11 at that point.
Super Bowl ad has already paid off for one company. That's next on OutKick 360.
So can you explain to the viewers who might not know anything about MMA, and I got to be honest with you, I'm a casual UFC fan. I watch the big cards, but I'm not an expert in the nitty gritty. Like, what is the traditional path for an MMA guy if he's chasing to get to the top of that world? Like, what's that look like? We know what it looks like for football. We know what it looks like for basketball. How's that play out for an MMA fighter?
Well, I mean, that's the big difference between MMA and the traditional sports you're talking about. Like, you have the collegiate, that line of going, and mixed martial arts, you don't really have. I mean, you have the wrestlers aspects, but being a good wrestler doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great MMA fighter. So it really looks a lot different for everybody. I mean, I was a traditional martial artist as a kid growing up, and then I found MMA was big because when we were around the same age when I was in high school, that's when the UFC started, like Chuck Liddell and all those guys started building the sport like crazy. And that's how I found it. I was just originally actually a hockey player. I played competitive high school. I played junior hockey.
Oh, you played juniors? Where at?
Yep. I played on the East Coast in the EJ, East Coast Hockey League. So yeah. And not East Coast Professional Hockey League, but EJ was up in the north. It was good. It was good hockey. We played again. I mean, I see guys I played against that are in the NHL all the time, and I went to a high school literally just for hockey. I went to a prep school for a little bit just for hockey, and that was my initial that's what kind of gave me that competitive athletic part of myself that I was definitely able to apply into the military, and I was definitely able to apply into fighting as well. So what happened is my senior year of high school, I was playing juniors. I decided that I wanted to come back to high school to play for my high school just because of, I don't know, girls and stuff or something. I don't know why I did it, but I came back to my high school. I came back to my high school hockey team. I played it. We were doing really good. It was a playoff game, and my first shift of the game was like big playoff game. I blew on my shoulder. I went to go hit a kid, blew on my shoulder. So my following year, I missed a lot of like the times we hit tryouts in the summer to play for the teams in the next winter for like good junior teams. And that's kind of when I picked up MMA, because like I wasn't, you know what I mean? I kind of got more into MMA then. I was like, it just kind of gave me an outlet that wasn't, I always pulling my energy into hockey. Now this gave me a separate outlet, and it was MMA, and I got competitive into that, did that for 2 years, and then until I eventually joined the military. So I think MMA fighters, they really could come from any branch, you know what I mean? But like for me, I played a lot of other sports growing up, and I think that helped me train like a professional athlete to be a professional MMA fighter.
So I got to ask, what's it like to get punched in the face?
Obviously I try not to get punched in the face as much as possible. I do not like to get punched in the face. I feel like, which is probably not a good thing, but over time you kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? I don't even blink my eyes when I get punched in the face. I remember when I used to get punched, get rocked, you get like this adrenaline feeling, like, oh my God, what happened? I don't really get that too much. It's either I'm getting knocked out or I'm just okay. So it's not the best feeling, but I try to avoid it. I try to be smarter, because concussions, you're hearing all these things about concussions this day and age, and I try to only do my hard sparring only when I need to for my fights. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to just, let's go spar. It's fun. I love it. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I try to be smart about what I do.
Well, when it comes to the preparing for a fight, now what's your record as a pro since you've gone pro?
I am 5-1.
5-1, and
yep.
That's wildly impressive. So if you were an NFL team with that winning record, you'd be amazing, right?
Maybe some of you have seen the Netflix documentary on the last Blockbuster. This is now on my list of things to watch, because the last Blockbuster exists in Bend, Oregon, and they cashed in on a Super Bowl ad that they posted on social media during halftime of Super Bowl 57. And, Chad, it worked. This ad that you're about to hear and listen to, sales went up 200%.
Wow.
Upon posting this ad.
That's not bad. It worked.
Here it is.
When the world ends and the internet streams no more, we'll still be here.
Hey, Steve.
It's a cockroach that's walking into the Blockbuster.
That's terrific. Very
Crawling
well
in.
done. And it's all shot in a very 1980s, early 90s way. The tint on the film.
The end of the world.
Is great. I thought it was going to be an ad for The Last of Us for the next episode at the start, and then it went there. It's crazy to me, though, that I don't know who follows The Last Blockbuster on social media, but clearly a lot of people picked it up and retweeted it, reposted it, did something with it that had an audience.
Yeah.
Whoever was picking it up, and then it grew that way. Pretty cool.
And it's mainly
Smart.
just merchandise and things like that they're selling now. But
you can do so. I'm pretty sure that I have seen this. You can actually Airbnb that place. You can stay in a Blockbuster for the night. The last one, they'll rent it out on the weekends where at like 7 o'clock, they'll sell things till 5.
Yeah.
You go in at night and you can spend the night in a functional Blockbuster. If you'd like, in Bend, Oregon.
Chad, I
think that's brilliant.
It's 1998, and you walk into a Blockbuster. What are you renting?
1998.
I'm just throwing out a late 90s option.
Probably Something About Mary.
Okay.
Would be a Blockbuster purchase. The DVD version, obviously. Obviously they graduated to DVDs at one point. So I was going with that. Maybe even Shawshank Redemption from a few years before.
Yeah,
would be a nice option.
Mine.
Plenty of good movies from that era. Titanic would have still been a big blockbuster hit in that time.
I'm going straight to the video games, like the WWF Raw video game or the Nitro video games, or like the NBA Jam for Nintendo 64.
That was big if I was like at a buddy's house that had a nice gaming system.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go to Blockbuster and get a game for the night. And then it's like, can we figure out the game in the short amount of hours we have before we pass out? And then we have to wake up the next day and your mom's going to have to drive us to go get it. That was always fun. It was such an adventure back in the day that kids today will never understand that, to actually get in the car, even in high school, if we get in the car, drive to the movie store, drive to the Blockbuster and go and pick out. Look at all the covers and pick something out and know that this is our night. This is it. We're going to go here at 7 o'clock. We're going to go home. We're going to watch this. We're going to eat something, and then that's going to be it. But it was fun.
It's a blast. Hey, also fun is following Jim Irsay on Twitter. This is either in reference, I'm guessing, to the #1 overall pick, the Chicago Bears, but the Bears also just finalized the property at Arlington Heights. That's officially purchased now by Chicago. And around the same time, Irsay tweets out, my relationship with the Chicago Bears goes back more than 60 years. And it's a photo of Jim Irsay riding a bear at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago.
Terrific picture. Every time we talk Jim Irsay, this should be the photo that's posted. Every time.
And jokes about Cocaine Bear immediately come out as well. See you tomorrow, OutKick 360.
Apt.